Hey guys, I'm Orwell's Ghost, and today I'm going to discuss progressive intersectionality and explain how it is the antithesis of liberalism. In the free and liberal society, there is the individual, the man or woman who lives and works based upon the independent choices he or she makes. This society is based upon the social contract of government, one where the citizens create the government to function in an effort to protect their rights, such as thought, authorship, association, and property. Now keep in mind, this is not necessarily pure freedom. We give up pure independence from the government through functions such as sales taxes and from time to time compulsory military service when the government needs more citizens. Now again, these are just a few of the sacrifices that the citizens of a free society will give up. The contract, however, with the government is that they entrust the government to take on the burden of ensuring the protections of these individual civil liberties. Therefore, the citizens entrust the government with limited powers in order to provide these services. Services include law enforcement, education, military defense, courts, and civil servants such as politicians, justices, and executives to operate and, when necessary, adjust the laws in order to better serve the citizenry. Again, in this society, government is the servant of the people. Now, on the other hand, we have socialism, which is the centralized control of the division of labor and the means of individual production, where the state is the sole beneficiary of the capital production by the citizens. The overall security, entertainment, commerce, medical care, and defense is controlled and divvied out by the state. In this state, the government centrally plans the functions and operations of not only the state, but of the citizenry. In short, the citizens are considered mere organs who work for the posterity of the state. In this government, the people are the servants of the government. Now let's talk about Marxism, which is impossible to exist in a socialist state because the outcomes are equal already. There'd be no disparity or necessity for such an ideology because the distributions of success would be equal, therefore no individual would know what better or worse could possibly mean. Marxism at its core is based upon Peterson's law, which is, identify a domain of human endeavor. Note that there's a distribution of success. Some people are doing comparatively better, some people are doing comparatively worse. Define those doing worse as victims. Define those doing better as perpetrators. Identify with the victim, have yourself a set of enemies handy to ventilate your resentment on, feel good about it, and endlessly repeat. Marxism is therefore founded upon the principle of a collective of oppressors over a collective of the oppressed. When Karl Marx drafted the Communist Manifesto in 1848, he labeled the bourgeoisie, or the wealthy upper-class blue-blooded industrialists of the time, who were in fact the few, as the oppressors, and the proletariat, or the poor working class, who would inevitably account for a significantly larger portion of society as the oppressed. Through his manifesto, he encouraged the proletariat to organize in an effort to trigger a revolution as a result of their class struggle against the bourgeoisie. Through their struggle and revolution, they would seek to tear down the structures of class hierarchy into an egalitarian utopia. The question is, why is this a problem? Because the revolution requires leaders. As Marxism is egalitarian and anti-hierarchy, a paradox therefore exists which would inevitably create new classes in this society, which Orwell referred to in 1984 as the inner party versus the outer party. These would be the bureaucrats who craft society based upon their worldview. They would also enforce the laws that they create. Because their worldview is the concept of their own personal beliefs and authorship, they would necessarily create a disparity in the desired opportunities of the citizens in this newly created classless society. However, they, possessing the purity of the cause, would undoubtedly centrally plan a system where they choose the workers for the specific jobs and the outcomes necessary to satisfy their goals of equality of outcome. The individuals within the society are therefore stripped of any individual sense of identity in order to create the purest collective of citizens. What I mean is, it begins with the premise that outcome supersedes opportunity. This is where we get to intersectionality and Thomas Smith. Now, Thomas Smith, to my knowledge, is a social justice advocate who recently appeared on Mythicist Milwaukee to debate Sargon of Akkad. I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of the debate, so I'll leave a link to the video in the description because it's over an hour long. But at one point, Thomas refuted Sargon's definition of intersectionality, which Sargon defined upon a Marxist foundation. Instead, this is how Thomas described it.
Intersectionality just has to do with the different levels of identity we have and how they interact. Intersectionality makes us more individual. Intersectionality allows us to say men have different experiences than women. Black people have different experiences than white people.
I can do that without intersectionality.
Black women have different experiences than white women. Latino women have different experiences than black women. Poor white women have different experiences than black women.
So?
That's intersectionality. I just gave you what intersectionality is that allows you to break down identities in a more dynamic way.
And therein lies the problem, because Thomas also believes that representation in the workforce should directly reflect the opportunity of the individuals based upon their collective identities.
Effort to
you say underrepresented. What's the number?
I think it's...
No, the desired number that you want to see.
I'm closer to the percentage that is in society. I'm arguing in defense of equality. If there's two equally qualified candidates and you need a tiebreaker, pick the underrepresented person.
Advocates for intersectional social justice don't quite understand the inherent discrimination in their arguments. The graphics I'm about to show you are some of the social justice movement's perceived class struggles, with the arrows pointing from the oppressor to the oppressed. Male over female. Rich over poor. White over colored people. Intersectionalists thus seek to correct past injustices through the value of thought, opinion, and existence, giving more value to the historically oppressed. This is called the intersectional stack. There have been some groups on the internet who've rated the veracity of certain identity features in graphics similar to this one, where the veracity of a wealthy white male's opinion, as shown in the center, is less than that of a colored, impoverished female. The website Disorderly Politics notes, then there's of course the progressive stack system, the most non-progressive idea in the history of equal discussion, and also totally contrary to the often stated belief that minorities shouldn't have to be educators. If you don't know what the progressive stack is, here you go. The lower class, bipolar, black, atheist, transsexual, lesbian woman in a wheelchair gets to talk first because she hit the jackpot when it comes to who is the most oppressed. That's the 10 in this situation. Where you fall on that 1 to 10 spectrum determines when you get to speak up, with straight white males being the last in line because, quote, they've dominated the discussions for long enough. Because all straight white guys are a hive mind in constant agreement and not one of them has anything new to say. Am I right? I will say that I'm paraphrasing in a negative way. Here's the actual definition. A progressive stack is a technique designed to ensure that people from marginalized groups get a chance to speak. It is sometimes an introduction to or stepping stone to consensus decision-making in which simple majorities have less power. The problem is, as Thomas said, these groups tend to desire different forms of identity through these dynamics. As I'll show you in this graphic, transgenders were originally left out of the stack, therefore left with the possibility of females oppressing transgenders with males oppressing both. Similarly, heterosexuals are capable of oppressing both homosexuals and pansexuals, with the possibility of homosexuals oppressing pansexuals. And we also failed to mention religion, where Christianity is capable of oppressing all manners of religion. Jews and Muslims could theoretically oppress both, with the Jews and the Muslims also oppressing the more minor religions. And then there's the educational status of the individual, with the high school dropout being at the lowest end of the class, and the doctorate holder, that is the PhD, MD, EDD, or DDS, having the highest status in education. As you can see, these graphics tend to get pretty complicated, and once they get as such, the intersectional stack starts to look something like this, where things such as race, religion, sex, income, and gender tend to become the lens through which we gauge importance, the lens through which we gauge value, rather than through the lens of meritocracy, where things like experience, work ethic, contribution, education, and personality should be the determining factors of an individual's value. To put it simply, in terms of liberalism and the individual, mere existence is the baseline of value. It is from the existence of the individual in a free and liberal society that he or she may choose the paths they so desire, not by extraneous factors such as race, religion, and gender. If we continue to place the merit of the individual on the basis of unchangeable biological features which he or she cannot control, we find ourselves on the razor-thin blade of the wedge, which will penetrate our society with the path for central planning and social engineering. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed my video, please like and share. And as I haven't provided a reading list in some time, what I would suggest doing is reading the books Anthem by Ayn Rand and 1984 by George Orwell. And I'd suggest reading them back to back, because they take place in very similar settings, but result in diametric opposite outcomes. Let me know what you think of my suggestions in my social media, and until next time, take care.